Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Some more good news. The Brexit impact on food prices would only be very modest, according to Tesco. So much so that the difference in prices for a regular consumer would not really be noticed at all for people, at least for people who would be shopping in Tesco. I'm sure Waitrose will do something just to make it extra fancy anyway. Although, having said that, of course, that still 26% of our food does still come from the European Union, about a quarter. At present, only 4% from South America, although, of course, there are quite a few South American countries lining up hoping to be able to sell their food over to us, and all being well, of course, you then get less halal import that you would from something like Australasia, which, for whatever reason, the New Zealand beef tends to be halal. Yep, it's not labelled on the products necessarily. I know the Iconoclast wanted to get a campaign going and did in order to get halal printed on food if it was halal, and in response he's been removed from YouTube, so that didn't quite work out so well for him, unfortunately. Nice chap otherwise. So, any changes to food prices after Brexit are likely to be very modest indeed under the deal struck between the UK and the EU, the chairman of Tesco says. John Allen told the BBC it would hardly be felt in terms of the prices that consumers are paying. And if you bear in mind the RPI, Retail Price Index, where things would go up about 3% each year anyway, it would just be absorbed into that. He said the deal was a good outcome and far better than no deal. Otherwise, of course, we would have to restructure things in order to discern where we're going to get imports in from. But there would be a lot of demand, and therefore it should be quite straightforward to fix anyway. It could even mean that we will have more domestic food, which is lovely, of course, for any British farmers, but it also means that food will be more seasonal now than it is at the moment, because presently you can essentially buy any fruits or vegetables at any time of year, and not just if they're frozen, but you can, because it's always in season somewhere in the world, and so it's harvested, picked, shipped over a few weeks premature, so that when it does come over, it's ripe, finally, once it's in England. But you can find almost any fruit or vegetables any time of the year in England because of globalism, essentially. So, he said the main benefit was that it removes the distraction from business and government. When reports last month suggested there might not be a post-Brexit trade deal, Mr Allen had warned the food prices could ride between 3 and 5%. Not a great deal, but again, something that would just have to be budgeted into, and I do hope that all of you have your own budgets set out weekly or monthly or quarterly accordingly. But he told BBC Radio 4's The World this weekend that the deal agreed this week meant any noticeable changes in food costs for consumers would be unlikely. The tariffs were things that were going to generate the price increases, he said. Yes, and of course if you're more Friedman-minded, or Hayek or even Sol, then you'd be against tariffs in the first place. Anyway, how you then go squaring that up with Trump and China, do please let me know. Allen said there'll be a little bit more administration associated with importing and exporting, but in absolute terms, I think they'll hardly be felt in terms of the prices the consumers are paying. The only possible difficulty that there could be is with 70% of small businesses only trading with the EU and not further afield, many of them may be dealing with customs paperwork for the first time, Mr Allen warned, which is something that you kind of expect, that you would have had time to get the terms with anyway, and business owners, the entrepreneurs, tend to be the more quicker reacting type anyway, and they're always forward thinking, because otherwise they wouldn't have a business. There's got to be some type of predictive element within their business plan, like it or lump it. If the deal had not been struck, Tesco chairman had previously suggested Brexit might change what Britons eat, as the prices of imported foods such as brie cheese could have risen by up to 40%. Yeah, so again, just changing diet. And of course, what would it mean? Brie cheese would go up, but the cost of fish would decrease dramatically, in which case we'd just be eating more fish again. And I think for most of us, we think that fish is probably better than brie cheese most days of the week. After all, we still have our cheddar cheese, which is the most farmed, simply because it's a good way to use leftover milk, that it's milk storage, if you will. So Alan suggests that Brexit will now only have a marginal effect on what shoppers put in their trolleys. We get the idea with that. They say the detail is not clear, but we were all set up, even if there was no deal, to continue to supply our Northern Ireland supermarkets. That'll be even easier now, as they were concerned, of course, going through the entirety of Great Britain, that with the Irish border disputes, that this seems to allay those fears, and there shouldn't be an issue there either. So, pretty straightforward as far as food goes. The thought of fisheries is, of course, still kind of at the forefront, as it isn't as pleasing as it could be, shall we say. But nonetheless, it seems to be a pretty straightforward transition. The main difference is to not have to worry about the European courts anymore. And now, after having our common enemy on the outside, we've got to turn our attention inwards and clean house, essentially. So I do hope all the politicians in the UK are worried that eyes are on them and they start getting their act together. But hey, I suppose we've hoped that for a while and have nothing to show for it. But that's it for me. So as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say, especially squaring up tariffs with Trump on China, because I'm a free trade chap myself. But we always have questions and we are always seeking answers. And then more questions. And like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff really does help the channel out a lot. And as always, until next time, have a good one.